So I want you to think just for a second, if you can, about specifically how you get your medical information, where you get your healthcare information, information about medicine that is relevant to you in your life. Where do you get that information? And in general, how is that information packaged? So think about that for a second. And now I want to show you a study. This is a study that was published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. And it's a study you've probably heard of. You might not remember that you've heard of it. It's a study called Moderate Alcohol Intake and Cancer Incidence in Women. Now this study, if you look at the methods section in the actual study, so in the publication of the study, this is from the methods section, and what you can see when they describe the study, it's 1.3 million women in the United Kingdom followed for incident cancer. So what kind of a study is that? That's an observational study, right? This is an observational study. We've got 1.3 million women. They follow them for years, better part of a decade, to see what happens to them. They collect all data about diet and lifestyle and medical history and past family history. They collect all of that data. They look at all of those variables. They see who eventually develops cancer, heart disease, many other things. And these are the conclusions from that study. Low to moderate alcohol consumption in women increases the risk of certain cancers. Now, does anybody see a problem with that sentence? This is from the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. It's one of our most prominent national institutes of health. And this sentence, syntactically, is a sentence of cause and effect. This sentence says, this thing increases that thing. It's cause and effect. But I just told you it was an observational study. It's an observational study. Observational studies can't speak to cause and effect. That's not possible. They can't do that. Randomized trials can speak to cause and effect. You isolate one thing in two different groups and you randomize to groups, you can talk about cause and effect. But when all you do is observe, you can't speak to cause and effect. What you can speak to is associations, which can be interesting and important. They can also be profoundly misleading. I'll give you an example. There's a very strong association between reading comprehension and shoe size. That's true. What's the confounder there? There's an important confounder in that strong, powerful association. Age, very good, age. Yes, when you're 5 years old, you don't read quite as well as when you're 25. But it is true, reading comprehension and shoe size are strongly associated. But immediately when you heard that, you knew something wasn't quite right. You knew that there wasn't a cause and effect relationship there because you thought about it and you said, reading comprehension, shoe size. I mean, when you see Bozo the clown walking down the street, you don't go, man, that guy can read. That's not your response. You're not an idiot. You figured this part out. There's something here that doesn't speak to cause and effect. That's just association. So associations can be profoundly misleading. So that's the first thing about this study. The next thing about this study that's worth knowing is that the relative risk is the result of most observational studies. This is what gets reported. If we say you're twice as likely to end up with cancer, that's a relative risk of 2. If you're 3 times as likely, that's a relative risk of 3. If you're 1 times as likely, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so it's exactly the same. There's no association at all. So the relative risk got reported in this study, and let me just tell you what a powerful relative risk looks like. So a powerful relative risk, I'm going to use smoking and lung cancer. How much more likely do you think it is that you're going to end up with lung cancer if you're a smoker compared to a non-smoker in your life? 2 times? I got 3. I got 10. I got 20. I like it. It's higher. It's more like 30 to 40. 30 to 40 times more likely you're going to end up with lung cancer if you're a smoker compared to a non-smoker. Now, that's a relative risk I can get behind. That's a relative risk. That speaks to cause and effect. You can maybe say something about cause and effect when you're up in those neighborhoods. What was the relative risk from this study? The numbers are in there. The numbers are coming. Take your guess. It's in there somewhere. Is it 50? Is it 10? Is it 100? 1.05? Are you kidding me? Is this a joke? 1.05 is pitiful. That's pathetic. That's not a relative risk association. That's almost proof that there is no association between these things. There's not a confounder in the world that's that bad. 1.05. That is awful. In fact, 1 in 30,000 is roughly the chance that in the general community you'll end up with esophageal cancer. And that's one of the cancers they're talking about that got increased. So if you're 1 in 30,000 in general, relative risk of 1.05 means you just went up to 1.05 in 30,000. That's how important that association was. Here's where you got this information previously. It's an interesting place.
But now this study in Britain of almost 1.3 million women showed that women who have one drink a day, whether it's a Chardonnay or a beer or a glass of scotch, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Even that innocuous glass of white wine increases the risk of breast cancer of the breast, liver, rectum, and the upper aerodigestive tract, which means everything from your mouth to your stomach. And then they estimate, because women in Britain drink similarly to women in the United States, that 5% of all cancers among American women in mid-age are in fact due.
Look at you. You women with your alcohol and your apple. You can see what's happening right on the screen there, and it says right here, any alcohol consumption raises the risk for cancer. It's cause and effect, and there it is for the rest of society. It's cause and effect now, and you saw the relative risk. This is one of my favorite cartoons ever published. Take a second, by Jim Borgman. It's a brilliant expression of what we all feel. Yes. Because last year, caffeine was terrible for you. But this year, it's probably good. Last year, you ought to eat a lot of eggs and drink a lot of dairy product, kind of milk stuff. Next year, don't touch that stuff. It'll kill you. Right? This is what we get. This is the information we get. It's the medical information that comes to us, and it varies from year to year. And one of the most pressing questions in healthcare right now, one of the most pressing questions as we try and fix our broken system and fix healthcare around the globe. Two things. What is the truth that lasts? Not the truth that's based on weak relative risks and observational studies, and next year it'll be different. What is the truth that lasts? And how do we package that truth? How do we communicate it in ways that are common language and everybody can understand? Those are the questions. Well, what is the truth that lasts? What is the truth that lasts? It comes from randomized trials. It's cause and effect. It's real answers. Systematic reviews of multiple randomized trials that summarize what comes from multiple different places about randomized trial data. That's the truth that lasts. 100 years from now, they'll be looking back and going, they got that one right. That's the truth that lasts. And how do we package it? Well, what do we just do? 5 minutes on association and causation and observational studies? You get it. That wasn't hard. This is not difficult to do. I said 1 in 30,000 becomes 1.05 in 30,000. This is easy. This is not difficult. You can understand this information if somebody wants to bring it to you. It's available. This is another device that me and my group have been working on. It's called the number needed to treat, the NNT. This is a wonderful communication device, and it's based in this idea, the number of people who need to be treated in order for one person to benefit. So the number needed to treat. This is a concept that we can use to communicate. I'll give you an example. High blood pressure pills. If you take high blood pressure pills, you're over the age of 60, you take them because you want to avoid a stroke, a heart attack, or death. That's why everybody takes high blood pressure pills if they have high blood pressure. If you take a high-risk cohort, people who are at high risk of having a heart attack, maybe they've already had one, maybe they're diabetic, etc. You compare high blood pressure pills to placebo in that group. Here's what the graph looks like. All the systematic review, 5 years on these pills, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of study subjects. Well, what we're looking at here is in the placebo group, your chance of having a bad event, a stroke, MI, or a death, a stroke, a heart attack, or death, was about 15%. In the group where you took the blood pressure pills and it went down to about 11%. That's about a 4% difference. But all of these people took the pills, and what that means is that this group right here, they're happy. That group, they weren't going to have a heart attack, a stroke, or a death no matter what anybody did. It didn't matter whether they took the pill that was a placebo or a blood pressure pill. It didn't matter. They weren't going to have an event. But down at the bottom, those folks, very unhappy. It didn't matter what they took. Whether it was a blood pressure pill or a placebo, they were going to have a stroke, a heart attack, or they were going to die. And right there in between, right there, that daylight, that's the power of the drug. That's the difference. That little daylight right there. That's the power of the drug. So this is a 4% difference, which means 4% of the population was affected by that treatment, which means 96% were not. So 1 in 25 people was affected. That's the number needed to treat. 1 in 25. Now, I'm going to talk about heart treatments because we're a We're a country with cardiovascular problems. So let's talk about the heart treatments for a moment. Now remember, if there's a 1% difference on that little chart, that's a 1 in 100. So 100 people need to be treated in order for one person to benefit. If it's 50% of the population is benefited, then the number needed to treat is only 2. You only need to treat 2 people and one of them is benefited. So the number needed to treat for a number of heart treatments. You take 5 years of aspirin. This is one of our most common treatments to prevent a heart attack, stroke, and particularly to prevent death. You take that drug for 5 years straight, religiously, and there's a 1 in 100 chance it will save your life. 1 in 100. It's not bad, particularly since it's a fairly cheap treatment, particularly since there's very few side effects. There are some, they happen, but 1 in 100. Now, how about statins? Statins are the miracle drug of modern medicine. They lower cholesterol. They're supposed to prevent heart attacks and death. This miracle, the number needed to treat, 100. 1 in 100 people, you take a 5 years worth of a statin every day religiously. You lower your cholesterol the best you can, and these are in the high-risk group. These are the people who have already had a heart attack. So they're at high risk for having another one. In that population, 1 in 100, you're going to save their life 5 years taking a statin. Now, what about if you're not high risk? What about if you haven't had a heart attack? If you take an aspirin or a statin and you're not high risk, well, you get this. No benefit at all. It doesn't save your life. It will not save your life. This is the number needed to treat. You can calculate this data very easily from huge systematic reviews. Hundreds of thousands of patients in randomized trials. You take an aspirin or a statin, and statins, 80% of the people in this country who are on a statin just have high cholesterol. They're not high risk. High cholesterol doesn't make you high risk. High risk is you've already had a heart attack, you've had a stroke, you're diabetic, you have high blood pressure and 4 other major risk factors. That's high risk. This is a low risk group, and 80% of the patients in this country who take a statin are on it without having that high risk profile. But it's guaranteed not to save their life, proven in randomized trials. How about this one? If you're having a heart attack, a major heart attack, you have a coronary stent put in to open that clogged artery that just clogged up during your heart attack, there's a 1 in 40 chance it's going to save your life. It could save your life. That's big. That's 1 in 40. Now, 39 out of 40, the stent wasn't going to be the arbiter of whether you lived or died. And most people will live, but some people will die, and 1 in 40 are saved by the stent. Now, in this country, we do about 1 million stents a year. 1 million stents a year, and 98% of them are not put in during heart attacks. So how about if it's not during a heart attack? Well, it turns out you put in a coronary stent any other time, there's no benefit. It doesn't protect against the next heart attack, and it doesn't save your life. It's the number needed to treat. It's infinite. The number needed to treat is infinity for this one. This is information that's powerful in a country where we think about medical interventions all the time. Does anybody know what the most powerful coronary preventive intervention ever studied is? Randomized trials, the most powerful intervention. I heard weight loss. I heard lifestyle. You're very close. Believe it or not, it's this. Can you believe this? It's a friggin' fad diet. But it's not just a fad diet. It's been around for thousands of years. And man, a diet, this is not even a diet. Let me tell you, the number needed to treat is 30 to save a life. To save a life among high-risk patients, 30 people, and you've saved a life eating a Mediterranean diet. And I call it a diet. It ain't a diet. This is not a diet. This is, you got to eat more olive oil. You got to, have a glass of wine with dinner every night. Plenty of meats, a little, less red, a little more white, a lot of fruits and veggies. This is vacation. This is not a diet, but it's the most powerful coronary intervention ever devised. How did this happen? It's been studied in randomized trials. How did this happen that nobody knows this? How did it happen that nobody's heard of a Mediterranean diet, and we do 1 million stents a year in people in whom it's proven to neither save their life nor protect them against their next heart attack? That is the symptom of a broken system. It's a broken system. A system where we don't communicate, where we don't value information. It's a system where we spend nearly twice as much per capita on health care in this country as the next closest country in the rest of the industrialized world. And our quality markers are in the lower half, lower quartile for the actual quality of healthcare in this country. And we're doing stents that cost thousands of dollars, and a Mediterranean diet is out here, and it's thousands of times more powerful than stents, because stents are infinite, and Mediterranean diet saves lives. How did this happen? This is the age of information. We're in the age of information. And in the age of information, information's everywhere. Data's everywhere. It's available on the internet. The study that I just showed you is available on the internet. But in healthcare, we have sequestered information. We have held it back. We have hidden information and made it hard to get to. We have not respected communication. We have not cared enough about communication. And this is the power of the NNT, because the NNT is information. It is information. This NNT is pregnant. It's bursting with information. It tells you the data from randomized trials. It gives you a comparative index across interventions. And it reminds you at the same time that for 29 out of 30 people, even with our most powerful intervention, we are not the arbiters of whether you are going to live or die or have a heart attack or not. 29 out of 30, 99 out of 100, 999 out of 1,000. We are not the arbiters. This information is something we need to get a hold of again. The NNT frees this information up, makes it available to everybody in a digestible, usable way, and information is transparency. When everybody in the room knows, when the janitor and the patient and the secretary and the doctor all know that a coronary stent isn't going to save a life or protect against a heart attack, it becomes a lot harder to administer that treatment. That's transparency. It leads to accountability, which leads to quality. And we need quality again in American healthcare. And in healthcare all around the world, we need to use this information tool. This information, this quality, this coming back into the exam room when a patient can talk to a doctor in ways that are digestible and understandable and that carry data and information without the invasion of fear-mongering and news reports that are designed to capture more viewers than convey information. When a patient can talk to a doctor, that is a grassroots movement that means science can talk to society again. And that is the power of information. That is the power of the NNT. Thank you.